to face the fear. Mr. Cemetery's Terror Tales begins now.
Welcome, my deliciously doomed listeners. I hope you're hungry for a tale dripping with dread, because tonight's little morsel is a feast of fear, served fresh from the darkest depths of the woods. You see, some legends are meant to keep you safe. Warnings whispered through the generations to keep foolish souls from wandering where they don't belong. But there's always one who doesn't listen. One who steps off the path and straight into the jaws of something that never stops feeding. So, pull up a chair, tuck in your napkin, and prepare for a tale that will gnaw at your sanity long after it's over. And I call this one The Hunger in the Woods. Enjoy.
And I shouldn't have gone into those woods. And I knew the story. Everyone in Ohio's heard the whispers about the melon heads. But I thought they were just tales, something to scare kids away from the dark. And that was wrong. Dead wrong. What I saw out there wasn't human, and it wasn't animal. It was a slaughterhouse of flesh and bone, a nightmare that crawled its way out of hell and kept on eating. And now, it's in my head, every night, gnawing at me like they gnawed at them. And it started with the fog rolling in, thick, gray, stinking of rot. I was hiking near Kirtland, miles from anything, when the air turned heavy, pressing down on my chest. The trees loomed, skeletal and twisted, their branches clawing at the sky. Then I heard it, a faint, wet squelch, like meat being slapped against a butcher's block. My boots sank into the mud as I stopped, my heart hammering, scanning the shadows. That's when the smell hit. Blood, raw, mixed with something rancid, like a gutted deer left to fester. I should have turned back, but my legs moved forward, drawn by some stupid instinct that I can't explain. The squelching got louder, joined by a low, gnarling wheeze, like a throat full of blood trying to scream. Then, I saw them. They burst from the fogs, shambling hawks with heads so swollen they looked like they were ready to bust, pale, veiny sacks of flesh throbbing with every step. Their skin was split in places, oozing yellow pus that dripped down their necks. Eyes like ruptured sores, leaking black sludge. Mouth stretched wide, lips peeled back over their teeth, jagged, splintered fangs caked with gore. They weren't alone. They were dragging something in the body, or what was left of it. The torso, arms gone, ribs open like a cracked cage, intestines trailed behind, slick and glistening, snagging on roots. One of them held a head by the hair. Its eyes were gorged out, tongue hanging down, scalp half torn off, flapping like a wet rag. And they didn't even look at me at first. They just kept working, ripping into the meat with their claws, peeling strips of flesh like it was jerky, blood sprayed, hot and thick, splattering the leaves. And I gagged, bile burning in my throat, but I couldn't move. One of them lifted an arm, freshly severed, still twitching, and bit into it, its teeth sinking deep, crunching through bone like it was chalk. Blood gushed down his chin, mixing with pus, dripping onto the ground in clots. Another slammed a rusted cleaver into the torso, chopped right through the spine, a sickening crack that echoed through the trees. Guts spilled out, steaming in the cold, and as they dove in, the claws were scooping up lumps of intestines, stuffing them into their mouths, chewing with wet, smacking gulps. That's when they saw me. Their heads snapped up, pus dripping, eyes locking on. They didn't run. They lurched, fast and jerky, claws slashing in the air. I turned and I bolted, branches tearing at my face, blood trickling into my eyes. Behind me, the woods erupted, trees snapping, earth shaking as they barreled towards me. Something whistled past my head. A chunk of bone, hurled like a rock. It smashed into a tree trunk and exploded. I tripped, slamming into a ditch, and that's when I saw the pile. A mound of bodies. Or pieces of them, stacked like firewood. Skulls caved in, brains oozing out like gray jelly. Limbs twisted, flesh flayed off, still dripping. One corpse was fresh, chest heaving, its mouth gurgling blood as a melonhead crouched over it, claw buried into its gut, pulling out a liver. Purple, slick, pulsing. It bit into it, its teeth tearing through, blood squirting across its face, dripping down its bloated head. I scrambled up, lungs screaming as they closed in. One swung a hook, rusted, crusted with hair and skin, and it grazed my arm, ripping a chunk of flesh clean off. Pain exploded, blood pouring, but I kept running. Their howls followed, wet, gnarling, starving. I stumbled onto the road, headlights blinding me, and I collapsed as the truck screeched to stop. I don't know how I survived. The driver said I was raving, arm gushing, babbling about monsters. But I know what I saw. Those melonheads just aren't freaks. They're a plague, a hunger that doesn't stop. They'll rip you open, crack your skull, scoop out your insides, and while you're still choking on your last breath. And out there, in those woods, they're waiting, teeth grinding, claws flexing, heads throbbing with every kill.
My brave little listeners, you made it through, mostly in one piece. But be careful, once the wood knows your scent, you might find yourself called back, whether you want to go or not. And trust me, the melonheads are always hungry for seconds. If you enjoyed this terrifying tale, make sure you subscribe so you never miss a story, because some horrors only come knocking once. And you don't want to be the fool who doesn't answer. And speaking of knocking, smash that notification bell. Like a rusty cleaver coming down on fresh meat. So you'll always hear when a new nightmare is served up, hot and bloody. Like this episode? Then share it with your friends. After all, horror is better when you drag someone else down with you. And don't forget to check out our merch. Whether you want to wear your fear or warn others to stay away, we've got something to satisfy your killer fashion sense. Now, tell me in the comments, if you had to escape the melon heads, what would be your survival plan? Best answer gets, well, let's just say, if the creatures come for you, I'll make sure they eat you last. Until next time, remember, the woods start whispering your name, run before they start chewing.